Awesome. And welcome to How to Make It in Toronto. I'm super excited today. I get to sit down with Coach Kevin Brewer, who is a mindset and weight loss coach. Um, he has lost 90 pounds in about 15 months, gone from being a disabled vet to running Spartan races, and is teaching people about maintaining a military mindset. And today he's going to share some of his fantastic tips with us, share his amazing story as well. So I'd just like to welcome Coach Kevin Brewer. How's it going, Kevin?
Doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. No problem. So I'll get started with, the question we ask everyone as soon as we get started, which is, how do you define success?
So I'd say success is being able to achieve your goals or your mission set, and reality is it's a rolling definition because what you achieved or succeeded for today is irrelevant for tomorrow. So
Mhm.
you have to continuously earn that success, So a lot of people like to hang on and go, "Oh, I did this one time, so therefore I'm an expert." It's like, well, you're not doing it anymore though. So
Yeah,
that's how I define it.
yeah, that's awesome. That's so true because people get caught up in accomplishments when success is, continuously accomplishing things and moving forward as you grow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you get started, or what's been your career like to this point? I know you were obviously part of the armed forces, but could you share a little bit of background into how you got to being a coach today?
Yeah, I think I've kind of always been growing into this role. So as I think we discussed, came from kind of a harsh upbringing where alcoholism ran in my family. So I always had a rough time with my dad, and we had a lot of really bad relationship growing up,
Hmm.
which got better later on as I kind of got my own act together and just realized some things and just kind of got over things and moved past it. But that kind of got me set up for that. In terms of being able to deal with adversity and a lot of
Hmm.
constant issues there, but I also had a lot of active good real role models in my life too, so it wasn't all doom and gloom. Then
Hmm.
I went to the military, of course, and did that, and just being in the military, just getting deployed constantly, having being married and having kids in the military.
Hmm.
I was I think I got deployed for 3 weeks. I think like a month after my daughter was born, and I was in Afghanistan when my son was born. So, there was this lots of time spent traveling, for instance, my daughter's first, I think it was like first 2 years of life. I think I was with her for like 3 or 4 months. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like I think I met my son at what was he born in June and October. So I think I met him at like 4 months, and then I didn't see him again until he was like 9 or 10 months. So
Wow.
there's a lot of times where in the military just kind of put you in positions where you just have to kind of overcome and adapt and just deal with things and do
Hmm.
the best you can. And then on my way back from Afghanistan, I had a severe sinus infection that just kind of just never went away. My whole left side was completely filled with infection. My right side was half full. And then I got
Hmm.
sick with like the swine flu or something on the way back too. So
Hmm.
and then I had a hernia that needed fixed.
Hmm.
So all kinds of things stacked up. When I got back, I was on antibiotics for the sinus infection, and I have psoriasis and that turned into psoriatic arthritis. And the antibiotics caused problems with tendons and ligaments, which I didn't know, and then psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis, which I didn't know about, causes damage to ligaments and tendons. And I ended up with a lot of issues and damage with that eventually went undiagnosed for a very long time. And since a lot of it was spinal related, ended up being cervical instability and kind of thoracic spine issues that led to a lot of neurologic issues that was completely undiagnosed for about 13 years. That
Wow.
put me on my ass, really like I couldn't do anything. I went from being somebody who was athletic and physical.
Hmm.
Somebody like every single time I did anything physical, I'd have effectively heart attack symptoms for the next 7 days that were so intense that I just barely could move. Heart attack and
Wow.
stroke. So all the pain down the arms, then the chest, my heart rate was elevated, and my head was like, um, And each year progressively got worse and worse as I got less and, as I started trying to do more and more things. And it was more and more undiagnosed. And then eventually I got to the point where I couldn't go from my couch to my fridge without effectively being paralyzed and having pain so intense that all I could do was lay down and cry and hope to die.
Oh my God. That is
Um,
intense.
yeah. So eventually I found the actual practice of mindset coaching, mental performance. And I just started diving into that and learning more and more about it, getting my mental state back under control, and realizing, okay, there's things I can do now. I went from being in shape to being 240 plus pounds during that time frame. So I said,
Mhm.
okay, one thing I can do, one thing I can control is my weight. I can do that. I can't do anything physical, but weight's not managed via physical activity. Weight's actually managed through your intake of food. So I was like, I can control that. So let me get that under control. So I did that, lost 90 pounds, never starved myself, never did any crash diets, and like that. It was always sustainable lifestyles. There was a couple times I tried different things like a plant paradox diet, or so to speak, or the carnivore diet. But those were kind of lifestyle choices. And I just found a way to say, okay, do I like it? Do I want to sustain it? And then how do I modify it to fit me? So they weren't like long-term, like specifically just to lose weight. It was more because I think the health benefits of it was that. So just to clarify there. Um, and then I just started going to town just trying to figure out what was going on with me. Just going to
Yeah.
different doctors, doing my own research, and then eventually found my own diagnoses, and then got to a doctor that finally listened. That could help me out, and started doing some stem cell therapy on my neck, and then the rest of my body eventually, and then just started rehabbing from there. So a lot of the rehab is mental, though. I mean, it's physical, obviously. You've got to rebuild your body, but a lot of it's just being able to mentally deal with the fact that you're going to have pain. How do I
Mhm.
interpret that pain? How do I monitor it and then understand how far do I push it? Where can I stop? Where should I stop? Where should I not stop? And then being able to leverage that to continue to grow and develop so that eventually my body fixes itself. So
Mhm.
that's kind of how I
So
got into it.
you had mentioned, yeah, thank you for sharing that. So I wanted to go back and say you had mentioned obviously growing up having some tough times with your father. Is that what resulted in you joining the military, or do you think maybe that was the first time you started, having some issues in terms of either like feeling unhealthy, or could you just describe that
Um,
more? Yeah.
I would not necessarily. So the town that we lived in was a very small town. It was kind of a farming town, and they used to have a lot of manufacturing stuff around there. But the area, a lot of this manufacturing stuff, most of it actually moved out of the area. So the reality was there was just no jobs there. There was
Yeah.
no like future per se. So I always knew I was going to probably have to leave the area in order to make a living.
Okay.
Um, but I was also just really tired of school. I hated school. Like I actually
Yeah.
don't particularly like the institution of schooling. I love learning. I try to learn something every single day. I deep dive into stuff myself. I love to educate
Mhm.
myself. I don't like the institution of school. I don't like being graded for stuff. I like to ask questions and not be told what I have to do. Like it's weird like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I college wasn't really an option for me.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, there was no jobs there, so I always knew I was going to have to leave. And
Mhm.
funny enough, a friend of mine in high school, he came to me one day and said, "Hey, I just joined the Navy. You should come with me. We can go to boot camp together. They can get us in the same boot camp class." And I was like, "Okay." And so I was like just on a whim. He was just like, "Yeah." It's like, "Okay, sign me up. Let's go." So
Yeah.
but
Oh, that's really cool. At least you had a friend there
yeah,
with you, right? Yeah.
yeah, it was pretty fun.
That's awesome. And so, while in the military, did you find that you learned anything that helped with your mindset, especially being far away from your family, as long as you were? Like, what got you through those moments to keep you mentally tough, to keep you, focused on, your work in the military, but also thinking of your family back home? Like, what are some things that helped you get through that time?
Yeah, the way I like to describe this is compartmentalization, right? Like a lot of people try to tell you that's bad, but it's actually the most effective way to deal with things, right? Like you deal with things in time when needed, right? Like so, and for instance, when I was deployed, uh, you basically schedule time to be sad or miss your family, to think about them, to do stuff that like would like maybe talk to them if you can, depending on where you are. My first set of deployments were underwater, so I couldn't really talk to my family because I was on submarines. But um,
Oh, cool.
so you would just like schedule time to like write notes or read something from that they would provided to you, or watch a video about them or something like that, right? So you just schedule time to be sad, so to speak. But the rest of the time, I wasn't married. I didn't have a family. I was doing my job, right? So you really
Mhm,
compartment and say like, hey, there's times where I am just Kevin. I am the guy. I'm the military dude. I'm doing my job. I have to be
mhm,
effective here. I'm 100% here. And then I'm going to schedule time to go be sad and be lonely and be, unhappy about the fact that I'm here, and then talk to my or be able to talk to my wife or whatever it is, try to get that time. But
mhm.
also have to be effective. And if I'm thinking about being sad all the time, I'm not going to be effective. So I schedule time then to be sad. So I literally compartmentalize it to say, hey, I'm going to segment my day out to do, hey, I got this workout, I got my job, I got this, and then I can be sad, right? Like so,
Yeah.
and not necessarily be sad, but right, like, you
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like process all that other
Focus on
stuff.
what
So,
you Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, exactly. No, that's awesome, and that's something I'm definitely gonna take in terms of being able to compartmentalize and then focus on the specific things that I need to. I also loved what you said about about school, and it's not necessarily the way that you learn. So for me, I'm definitely very much like a visual learner. Like I need to see
yeah.
something visually, understand it from a different concept. For you, what helps you in terms of like how you're consuming content? What resources are you currently using to to grow your mindset, to help as you're coaching as well?
Um, let me backtrack real quick, just on something you just said there is that the compartmentalization thing, it actually is really effective. So you said you're going to use it. It's actually really effective for people who work from home because,
Mhm.
or have like this whole concept of work-life balance or work-life integration. That's it's crap, right? That honestly,
Mhm.
it's just
Yeah.
them trying to control every aspect of your life, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um, Because the thing is, like, if you're never 100% in whatever you are, you need to be functionally unbalanced. If you're not 100% in whatever you are, you're going to be not, 50% wherever you are, right? So you're never
Yeah.
actually engaged in either one, which means your family, your friends, whoever, your loved ones are not getting 100% of you. And that's not fair
Mhm.
to them either. So when you compartmentalize, when you're with your family and you're spending time with them, it's 100% with them. Your work doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
And then vice versa. So it works effectively for people working from home or doing the whole work life hybrid thing. So anyway, just to
That's
point that out.
perfect.
In terms of learning, what I don't like about schooling is that they try to push some things too fast. They try to push other things too slow.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's too broad, right? Some things like that. Um, and then, like you just said, like talking about visual, audio, all those things. It depends on the subject, but
Mhm.
there's sometimes I just have to do it, and I actually just have to screw it up.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
can so I can reverse engineer it, right? So like sometimes I
Yeah.
have to start with the finished product and go, okay, how did you get there? And then work backwards. I don't know
Yeah.
why, that's just how I do it, right? And generally speaking, for me, if I don't know the lowest level thing, so for instance, think
Yeah.
about a website. I was like, what the heck is a website? Like, I don't even understand it, right? But then once I
Yeah.
realized it's just a Word document on somebody's computer that they're sharing with the rest of the world, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
I didn't understand what it was until you started putting in like the simplest terms. So
Yeah.
99% of people, they don't understand something. It's because there's like a bottom level thing, which goes back
Yeah.
to the fundamentals, right? Like if you don't understand the fundamentals of something, then you're just never going to get it because there's usually some missing small thing at the bottom that's like, well, that would unravel the whole thing. So for
Yeah.
me, depends. Sometimes it's visual, sometimes it's kinetic, sometimes it's like I just have to read. There's times where I could just read a bunch of information, I'll store it and go, okay, I don't necessarily understand it, but I know I have to get the kind of baseline and underlying information and then go
Mhm.
and apply it and then go, oh, that makes sense now. So it
Yeah.
just depends on what it is. Certain things like depending on how interested I am in it, I can pick it up really fast. Other
Mhm.
things, it takes me forever, and I'm because I'm just not that interested in it. Um, so it just really depends, which is why I
Yeah.
like to do it on my own because then I can, you know,
Yeah.
And also just kind of a side note, I think to me, higher education, so to speak, what they call higher education, it is
Mhm.
just a study path, right? Like that's really all it is. So it's like, well, I'm just somebody else's study path, the way they learned it, and they're just telling you, you have to do it this way. Well, if I know what subject I want to learn, why don't I just start learning it, like, and make my
Yeah.
own path, talk to people who've done it, people who are experts in the field, and then start the path on my own, right? Like I don't have to go pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in the US now, right,
Yeah.
to study somebody else's path where I can just do it myself. And that, especially with everything that's online, all the books you can get, like there's so much information out there that to me, unless you have to have it, like for
Yeah.
some specific reason, it's just not for me because I learn at different paces for a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And oftentimes there's some things that they're just teaching you that I just don't need to know.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I love the way you look at it because that's exactly how I think is I need to break something down. I need to understand it on
Yeah.
a fundamental level and then kind of learn up, or as you're saying, learn backwards at the same
Yeah.
time, which helps me see it from so many different perspectives. So I love that.
I
And
figured
so
that out in math, actually. That was actually a big thing for me in math. Like a lot of times
yeah,
they'd be sitting there talking, I'm like, I have no idea what you're saying. Just show me what the end product is and I'll work it backwards. And then 99%
yeah,
of the time I could figure it out. Like, oh, okay,
exactly.
now I understand it.
Exactly. I wish, as you're saying, as like, I wish in school they had those different types of thought that allowed people who learn
Yeah,
differently rather than learn like some kind of group fashion and be
yep,
more repetitive and be able to just respond to what they're asked to read or and just respond with whatever they're
yeah,
told rather than actually being able to break things down and explain it to you. So
yeah.
I totally agree with that. So how did you? I know obviously you had left the military and unfortunately started going through some health issues, which were really obviously debilitating for you.
Mhm.
But you somehow decided to get into while you were, I think, was it while you were sick, or had you started to get better when you decided to jump into Spartan racing?
Uh, so I fought with lots of doctors during that time frame, right? Like different things. So I always knew there was something. A lot of doctors wanted to say it's all mental, right? Which,
Mm,
and I'm not going to deny that there was a mental component to it, right? Like,
mm,
but usually what the thing is, like your mental component is there's something underlying there, and then the mental aspect amplifies the actual problem, right? So like it goes from a 3 to a 7 or 3 to a 5 or whatever, right?
mhm.
Like, or a 5 to 10. But there's something there first. And
Yeah.
I think that was always the thing. I always knew there was something there, so I continued to fight. And I just like trying new things. And when I came across the Spartan concept or the idea of it, or like the Spartan races, I was like, I always knew, I was like, man, I want to try something like that. So it was always kind of in the back of my mind that I wanted to do something like that.
Hmm.
And then I ended up doing this coaching certification program called the Heroic program. And
Hmm.
one of the last things they want you to do in that program is to do a obstacle course, right? So, they partner with Spartan for this, but they say you can do any of them. But um, so I wanted to do that from that. So and I was actually in, I think it was December of 21, I think, or 22, December 22, where I had my second treatment. I wasn't quite I was making progress, but I wasn't quite there. And I was signed up to doing the Spartan with them. And my
Hmm.
body shut down the night before, and I just couldn't get to the starting line. I was trying everything. I had some Vicodin, some pain pills. I was
Hmm.
using those. I was using this TENS. You know what the TENS unit is, like the stimulators.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had one of those going. I was using some heat pads, ice packs. I was trying everything, and I just couldn't get to the start line. I was like, I just can't do it.
Hmm.
So I was just determined after that. That was like, there is no chance I'm not going to make one of these races. I'm going to do one. So at that point,
Hmm.
a couple months later, I got my third treatment, and I started with a physical therapist that comes to my house every day, every week. Um, and I was like, no, I'm going to do this. So last September 2023, or yeah, 23, I did my first Spartan. I made it to the starting line and finished that. And after that, I was like, no, I'm definitely doing more of these. So last year, my goal was to try to do all three distances, and I ended up doing way more than that. So I did all three. I ended up doing all three by June, And then in August, I did all three in one weekend. So
Wow.
I just keep pushing the goalpost.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell me about the mental toughness, because I know, when you're going through these, I'm trying to motivate myself to try and to get through one of them. But everyone talks about sometimes you hit a wall, right? As when you're
Mhm.
running or going through it. What are some tips you can give about being able to overcome that and have that strong mentality to keep going?
First is to realize you don't have to win it. You don't have like they just want you out there and experiencing it, right? So just get to the starting line. There are so many people on the course that'll help you through obstacles. If you can't finish an obstacle, you can do like burpees or whatever. There's like penalty laps for some of them. And even if you just skip it, nobody cares. They just really want you to get out there and try. So it's really just getting out there and putting forth some effort. That's the biggest thing. Um, but uh, if you're trying and you're really trying to get through it and really pushing yourself, then so actually, let me backtrack there for a second. So I said my original goal beginning of year last year was to do all three distances. And when I was looking at doing the 21K, I kept pushing it further and further. I was like, oh, maybe I'll do it in October, maybe I'll do it in November, maybe I'll do it in December. Then I was like, eventually, I think it was like in April, I was like, man, I actually think I'm just afraid of it. So I said, screw it. I am just going to find the next one that's close to me so I don't have to travel real far. And then I'm just going to sign up. And being in Virginia, the closest one to me at the time was Fayetteville in beginning of May, Fayetteville, North Carolina. And I
Mhm.
was like, all right, I'm gonna sign up for it. So I signed up for that. I wasn't ready for it one bit, but I was like, I'm afraid of this. I'm just gonna figure it out on the course. So
Yeah.
part of it is just signing up, right? Then I was like, all
Mhm.
right, well, I'm gonna go. And I was like, I'm gonna test myself the weekend before. I'm gonna push myself and try to do some extra stuff. Do like a 8 to 10 miles with a 20-pound weighted vest and stuff like that. Walk run, and that should get me ready.
Mhm.
Um, I felt pretty good going into it, and the 21K is like a half marathon effectively.
Yeah.
Through this particular one was through like a family farm, and it's got a bunch of obstacles, obviously. So I was going through, and I got about a mile. I was doing pretty good, all right, and I was like, I'm feeling pretty good about this. And the humidity finally got to me, and I guess lack of food or something. I don't know. It was about
Yeah.
mile nine. It just kicked me right in the teeth, and I was like, "What in the heck?" And I was down. Like I just laid at this obstacle at mile nine. I was literally laying there for like 90 minutes.
Mm.
Like I was like the whole time I was fighting up and down, going like, "Oh, I gotta call medical. I gotta come get me." Like I couldn't walk. I was like, "Man, I'm not gonna be able to finish." And people were all coming by, and they were giving me like a cup. Like I had never heard of this, but you can eat mustard packs, and that has like there's a bunch of electrolytes in mustard.
Oh,
I would
wow.
have never thought that, right? So somebody gave
Yeah.
me mustard packs. Somebody gave me like one of those like Stroop waffles. Um, the volunteer gave me a bunch of water. Somebody else gave me like a salt tab. And then the volunteer ended up giving me like a bag of Fritos and those corn chips or whatever. And I don't even eat stuff like that anymore. And I was like, I gotta get something in here. And I ended up eating those. And then like for some reason, like a rain front came in and like really cooled everything down too, all at the same time. So
Wow.
about I was about 90 minutes in, and I finally like, you know what? I was at the obstacle that I really wanted to try. I was like, you know what? Let me see if I can just finish this. I really want to try this one, so let me just go ahead and just see if I can do it.
Mhm.
Whatever. If it happens, it happens. If not, then whatever. It
Yeah.
was a lot of upper body anyway, so I was like, my legs, if they don't work, that's fine. I can use my arms.
Mhm.
So I completed the obstacle, and I was like, oh, I'm walking okay right now. And it's only 4 miles. Let me just start walking. I was like, I don't think I can run this, but I could walk,
Yeah.
right? If I just get one step in front of the other, just keep going, right? Like I don't have a time limit, right? I just got to get
Yeah.
to the end. I just want to get to the end. It's like I
Yeah.
feel pretty good right now, so let me see what happens. And I just started walking. I was like, all right. But I'm telling you, that 90 minutes, man, like it was up and down. Like I was like,
Yeah.
let me call medical. No, let me wait a little bit longer. Now let me call medical. No, no, let me. So it was like a battle. So there's this I think I tell people, talk to yourself more than you listen to yourself, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
I started listening to myself, and I was like, oh man, that's when I was like, oh, let me just call medical. And I was like, you know what? And I had to interrupt that thought and go, hey, no, just
Yeah.
wait it out, let your body calm down, just do some stretching, like people are giving you stuff, let the food kind of settle in, then
Yeah.
it'll go in, it'll rejuvenate you a little bit. So if you just give it time, right? And then you give it a
Yeah.
little more time, and all of a sudden it's like, you have that cycle going again, going like, oh, that whiny voice. So you just have to keep interrupting it, right? Just keep
Yeah.
interrupting it. And
Exactly.
then after I got going, I was like, you know what? Let me keep finding reasons that I'm feeling okay. Rather than looking for the reasons I don't feel good, let me just keep finding reasons that, hey, I can make this. You know what? Hey, just a
Yeah.
couple more feet, just a couple more miles. Let me walk, right? Like if I can just walk to this next obstacle, I'll go see what happens at the next obstacle.
Mhm.
So I just kept talking to myself and just saying, hey, let's just try this next couple steps. Let's see what happens. And
Yeah.
eventually I got to the end, I felt great. I was just so happy about it. And then after that, you're just like, all of a sudden you get this like, extra life. You're like, oh my God.
Yeah. Oh man, that's awesome. You're totally right when you say that positive self-talk, right? It can get you through everything, and being able to rearrange that thought from I
Yep.
can't to I will, and finding a way is so important. And what an amazing story! I like. It
You know,
sounds like you went to hell in that 90
yeah,
minutes.
well, definitely did. And a lot of people actually have a problem with that, like the whole positivity thing, like oh, I can't go
Mhm.
positive because like if somebody's extremely negative, right? Like they go, I
Mhm.
can't go from negative to positive, and some people legitimately, it is really hard for them to do. You don't
Mhm.
have to go from negative to positive though. You just have to get out of negative, which means you can just get to neutral, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't have to be positive. You just have to stop talking negatively, right? Like so if you can get to neutral, then neutral you go to neutral to positive, or you just stay neutral. That's fine too, right? Like, hey,
Yeah.
that's not doom and gloom. Can I just find a reason to keep stepping, right? Like so it's like
Yeah.
you don't have to say I'm going to do this, like rah rah cheer cheer. No, you can. If that's something you're comfortable with, you're okay with, that's fine. But if you
Yeah.
can't, that's also fine. Just get to neutral, get out of the negative, and if you get out of the negative, you can find reasons to keep going.
Exactly. Exactly. I love that. Let's jump into this because I feel like you just gave us a great session. But in that it is, so why did you get into coaching, and how are you now helping people today? Mm.
A lot of it was just part of it was during my journey. One of the things that happened was like I was in my closet one day, and I was still going through it, and like I was going through the symptoms again, and it was all kicked up, and I was feeling. I was like, you know what, screw it, I'm just gonna lay here and die.
Mhm.
And I said, I wasn't a particularly religious person, um,
Mhm.
but I said, hey, God, if you let me live through this, I'll figure it out and I'll start helping people. So part of it's just fulfilling that, right? So it's
Mhm.
like, hey, I have done a lot of things. I've gone through a lot of things. I've experienced a lot of things that a lot of people hopefully will never have to. If I
Mhm.
can even help you start your journey from a higher level and then elevate you, fine.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna do everything possible. I also know that everything begins and ends with a thought, but not very many people learn the skill of thinking,
Yeah.
right? So they're
Mhm.
taught all these different things, they're told all these different things, they have all these beliefs that are like from somebody else, but they've never questioned those beliefs. They've
Mhm.
never questioned their own thought process or how to actually think because you go to school and schools tell you what to think, not how to think,
Mhm.
oftentimes. So I said, hey, I'm tired of seeing this in society. I think we're being told all these different things, especially young boys, it's just nowadays, right? Like they're told
Yeah.
not to be boys for the most part, right? And not to be
Mhm.
young men. And it's really fallen down. And I just know that I can help people get out of that because I have experienced the highs and lows of that, right? Like, I mean, before when I was in the military, right? You're
Mhm.
extremely, masculine, all those different things, right? And then when
Yeah.
you get knocked down, you basically can't do anything physical, like right, like it's punishing to you mentally. And I
Yeah.
didn't realize exactly why, but eventually I figured out why that is, right? And it's like part of it's because being a man, right? Like you are a natural protector. That's kind of your role, right? Like
Yeah.
protect and provide. Well,
Mhm.
I was not capable of protecting anymore. I felt, right? Because I couldn't do anything physical. And then I got to a point where I was like, I can't even get to work, so I can't provide. I don't
Mhm.
even feel like a man, right? So I was like, I have to find a way through this. And
Mhm.
once I did, I was like, I have to teach other people how to
Yeah.
do the same. So
Yeah. That's awesome. That is awesome. And so, what would what's your goal with your coaching program to reach as many people as you can?
Yeah, really, it's change people's mindset, right? So like a lot of people have this doom and gloom or this all these beliefs that they're not good enough, right?
Mm,
And the reality is most of us are just a bunch of nobodies. Like even the people who are quote unquote somebodies, they're just have started out as nobodies and somebody put some value to them, right?
yeah,
Like, so I just want to help people understand that they have the capabilities. Like we all have the capability of doing something great. We
yes,
were
sir.
just told that somewhere down the line that we're not, right? Like nobody's really held down, nobody's really limited in any capacity for the most part.
Hmm.
You were taught that. But the
Hmm.
reality is, if you look around you, you can continuously find evidence that suggests otherwise. So
Yes,
if
sir.
we can just change your thought process, stop it in there and go, okay, well, can you find evidence to say that that's not true, right? Because
Mhm.
if you're looking for it, you'll find evidence that is true all the time, right? Like every negative thought you can find evidence somewhere that is true. But you can also find the converse of that too, right? So you can say, hey, there's actually evidence here that suggests that that is something I can accomplish,
Mhm.
right? So, and especially if it's intellectual, right? Like I really, there's very few people I think in this world that have a lack of true intellectual capacity. You
Mhm.
just have to be interested in it and find a reason to. And if you're not interested in it, that's why you're not doing it, right? So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
and that's perfectly fine. But somebody told you were supposed to. If you're not, then you're not. Find what you are, and you can do great things with that too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. You're totally right. So, Coach, tell us where we can find you. Where can people learn more about your program or connect with you?
Yeah, I spend most of my time on Instagram. It's like the easiest platform. It's the DM capabilities, and that's really good. And I just easiest to just post on there. So at Coach Kevin Brewer on Instagram is the best way to get a hold of me, and then we can take it offline from there if need be.
Awesome. That's perfect. And so for me, one of my final questions I love to ask is, what are you most proud of at this point in your career?
Um, I think we talked about this like in the first conversation. Is I don't particularly have favorites or something on most of anything.
Mm,
Um, Just the concept of continuously never giving up, I think that maybe it would fit into that realm because it's just so blanket and but yeah, I guess for me that's really it because that kind of leads to everything else is the fact that I generally speaking will just never give up on anything that means something to me, right? Like
mm,
so just the fact that I never gave up my fight for my health and everything, like, and the things I've been able to learn and overcome or, accomplish because of that. So
mm,
staying in that mindset of like, hey, I am not my past. I'm
mm,
going to learn from it and grow from it rather than letting it destroy me.
mm,
Even stuff with my dad, what I mean? Like, when he died in April, when I kissed him on his forehead in this coffin, right? It's like,
mm.
nobody ever growing up would have thought that would have been the case. But, I traveled back to see him a couple of times when he was sick and everything. So I, I grew and developed. I never let that bother me, never let me help me down because those things weren't who I was. They
Mhm.
made me who I am though. And if I diminish them and I give up because of them, then they were meant nothing. So I
Yeah.
guess to me that'd be what I'd be most proud of is the fact that I never let any of that stuff stop me. I
Mhm.
just let it help me grow and develop.
Yes, sir. That's beautiful. Thank you. That's great. And so my final question for you is, if you had a theme song for your life, what would that be?
A theme song for my life. Ooh, I don't know.
Or for a period in
Um,
your life. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. That's actually a really good question. I can't think of anything right now.
Okay, you can always send it to me after.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Um, oh, you know what? I think AJR is 100 Bad Days.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
You know
Okay.
that song?
Yeah. Yeah, I do
Yeah, yeah.
actually.
100 bad days means 100 good stories. That's actually probably a good one for me because
Yeah, I love that.
I like to take what people consider bad experiences and say, hey, you know what? I had a wild ride though.
Exactly. Exactly. I love that. That's a great hack. Hey, Kevin, thank you so much for your time today and for joining us on How to Make It in Toronto. It's been phenomenal to learn your story, hear how you think through things, hear how you think as well. Obviously, your fantastic message and your resiliency and never die attitude. So just want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. I genuinely loved having a conversation with you. First conversation and then this one too. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. And I'll definitely be reaching out so we can have more conversations along the way as well. Thank you so much, Kevin.
All
Take care.
right, man. Yep.
See ya.